Today I will be talking about our proposal for using the cognitive mechanisms in the analysis of counterfactual conditionals by AGI systems. The talk will be divided into mainly two sessions. First, I will introduce the problem. Then I talk about the cognitive mechanisms that seems to be responsible about the reasonable analysis of a given counterfactual conditional, and then propose our way of utilizing these cognitive mechanisms in AGI systems in general, and show our proposal using HTTP, our framework. So the reasonability when analyzing counterfactual conditionals is very important as a general intelligence aspect because counterfactual conditionals are not like other conditionals, for example, material implication, where you have binary truth value. You can say something is true or false. But for counterfactual conditionals, it's always debatable. So you don't look for binary truth values, but for reasonable analysis of a given counterfactual, or that's how we see it. So we talk about the responsible cognitive mechanism. So in this example, you can see the definition of counterfactual conditionals. If you don't know it, it's just a conditional in the form of what happens if an antecedent would be the case. So if it were the case that antecedent, then it would be the case that consequent. For example, I would have cooked the dinner if my wife had not done so. So this is in the subjunctive mode. So we are assuming something that is contrary to fact. Actually, some people may say, yes, if your wife hadn't done the dinner, you might have done so. But some of my friends may say, no, you are lazy. Even if your wife hadn't done cooked the dinner, you will not do that. Okay, so both arguments may seem reasonable, which is different from the indicative mode. So the second and the third statements are famous ones to indicate this, the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive mode. So in the second one, we say if Oswald didn't shoot Kennedy, someone else did. If Oswald had not shot Kennedy, someone else would have. So as pointed out in the literature, people might agree to the first one, but not to the second one. And here where it comes the stagnation of areas that deal with the counterfactual problem in many treatments. Philosophical arguments have been given. For example, David Lewis and Robert Stelnecker, they have given accounts on the similarity of possible words to account for the analysis of counterfactuals. Also, we have many psychological experiments led mainly by Ruth Perner, in which she shows that the basic idea is to keep two possibilities in mind while reasoning about counterfactuals. Also, we have treatments in linguistics, in algorithmics, and in some other places. So it's important in science to have an account about counterfactuals. And it also has many applications. Of course, I have prepared one of the applications about the current situation in Egypt, but I think the time now is not enough to discuss it, but the main point is that it's applicable, it needs some kind of reasoning. It should be included as a general aspect in AGI systems. The cognitive mechanisms include at least analogy and concept blending, or that's what we are proposing. According to Fauconnier, he says that the structure of counterfactuals is not truth functional, as we perhaps noted, but they rather draw analogies from alternative conceptual spaces. So we need kind of analogy, like also the similarity account in philosophy. We need the conceptual spaces, like what's given in linguistics, and the psychological experiments of Ruth Perner at least show. So just a quick introduction about concept blending, if you don't already have heard about it. It's a kind of knowledge integration from giving two domains or two concepts. You can come up with a third one that inherits some of the properties from both domains and might induce some new emergent structure in its own. So the usual or the prototypical model of conceptual blending, in which you have two spaces, space 1 and space 2, as input spaces, where you have some kind of a generic space that identifies the common properties or the common rules that these items play in each space, and then you come up with a new emergent structure in which you might have something new or emergent structure of its own, but in general the blend says something new. Like, for example, if you take computer virus, this is one of the examples. Computer is a computer, virus is another thing, but computer virus is a totally different. It's not computer, it's not a virus, but it's a blend of both. I will not talk about these technical issues about concept blending because this is not the focus of this talk. So the other rule, the other cognitive mechanisms that we think is responsible for doing the reasonable analysis is the analogy making. So in general, if you have source and target domain, you find some analogy between them to find the rules that elements play in each of the given domains, perhaps assuming that you are thinking about two domains at the same time as the psychological experiment says. So our framework in particular uses HTTP, and for those who didn't attend yesterday's talk by Tarek, I will just need to say that HTTP is a powerful analogy making system for computing analogical relations between two given domains or theories or concepts which are axiomatized in first order logic. In general, if you have two expressions, then HTTP applies a restricted form of anti-unification to find generalizations, and this captures the deep structure similarity between the two given domains, the source and the target. So, if, for example, if you have something like Ahmed would have cooked the dinner if Nashwa had not done so. So you have two worlds, the source and the target, or the real and the hypothetical world. And now in one of them you have the Nashwa cooked, and in another you have Ahmed cooked. So these items are playing the same role. So if you use the analogy engine, you can identify them in a generic space or in general with this X. So Ahmed and Nashwa plays the same role for the hypothetical and the real world. Of course, the basic idea in using this analogy making system and conceptual blending to reason about counterfactual conditionals is to first detect the structure commonalities in both domains given by the antecedent and the consequent of a given counterfactual conditional. Based on this generalization, objects from domains can be imported to the blend, giving rise to several blends. Some of them may be reasonable, some of them may be inconsistent. So we put these criteria to govern the kind of blending, the resulting, the possible blends that can be constructed from such. So the first one is counterfactuality. So we must insist that in the blend we have the antecedent of the counterfactual, of course. Okay, and the choice says also something sensible, that exactly one object alternative from each matching pair from the given domains must be selected, and the resulting blend should be consistent. And the maximal in the sense that if it contains another blend, then we take the bigger one, in simple words. So let's have an example using the famous counterfactual analysis given by Quine and others. So it says something like, if Julius Caesar was in command during the Korean War, then he would have used the catapult. And some people say, no, he might have used the atomic bomb. In any case, we know that Julius Caesar is ruthless, we know that the war is there, and we know some stuff. So if we try to formalize it, or at least represent a source and the target domain using the Korean War as one, and the Gallic or the Roman Empire War as another one, representing the main axioms of the domains. Like, for example, we have here KW1. MacArthur is in the command of the American army in the Korean War. The atomic bomb is the most devastating weapon. MacArthur does not use the atomic bomb. Also in the Gallic War you have similar axioms. Using the analogy engine, you might identify a generic space. You might identify the elements into the generic space that gives you something like X is in the command of the Y army in Z, and W is the most devastating weapon. With this identification, so Caesar plays the same role of MacArthur in this domain and the other domain, Roman, American, Gallic War, Korean War, and so on, catapult and atomic bomb, which might give rise to something like this here. So you identify some axioms from both domains to give some generic space, and as we said, based on that generic space, we introduce several plans according to the given principle. So you first have the principle one, the antecedent of the counterfactual must be imported in the blend, which poses some restrictions on X and Y and D. And now you can import as many axioms as you want from both domains as long as the other principles are satisfied. Like, for example, importing KW2 as B2 in the new space, RE3, and so on. Some blend constructions might result, some of them are maximal, some are not, some consistent, some are not inconsistent. So according to this analysis, you might, for example, give rise to two several blends. Both of them contain the antecedent of the counterfactual, and in one of them, it's true that Caesar uses the atomic bomb, whereas in the other, it's clear that uses the catapult. So both arguments might be called reasonable according to our analysis. So in summary, I try to emphasize the importance for using cognitive mechanisms such as analogy making and the concept blending, and emphasize the importance of analyzing or a reasonable analysis of a given counterfactual conditional as a general intelligence aspect, plus an indication of a proposed model to utilize the mechanism that's proposed. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Questions? I don't have a question. I have an unrelated announcement, which is that due to my lack of general intelligence, I left my iPhone in here during dinner and it disappeared yesterday. So we have undertaken some search and not found it. So probably someone stole it. But if anyone happened to randomly pick up the wrong iPhone, which has a case with a weird, colorful pictures on the back of it, let me know.
I saw.
You saw it? Well,
Okay, later.
you saw it sitting there.
The phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And someone put it aside. And after that, I don't know.
Someone put it aside. Okay, let's talk afterwards. This may be my excuse to buy a new phone, but I guess I don't know. It wasn't the latest model. All right, so the only other announcement is there's the business meeting, which will mostly discuss future conferences, and anything else AGI society related will be at 1:15. So if you want to participate in that, grab a fairly quick lunch. Otherwise, we'll see you after lunch.
People that general